So today we are jumping into some truly strange and wonderful waters of language philosophy. Our guide is a man. His name is Hankman, and he's wearing a T-shirt that just says truth.
Right. But the really bizarre part, the hook, is that he refuses to say a single word.
It sounds like the setup for a pretty bad joke.
It does, but our sources, and we've got this really compact, funny dialogue and some deep analysis, they show this is actually a brilliant little piece of intellectual theater.
Okay.
It really lays out this huge gap between being something and saying you're something.
So our mission for this deep dive is pretty simple then. We're trying to pull out the philosophical core of this silence.
Exactly.
We need to figure out why saying I am the truth actually forces this character, Hankman, to just stop talking.
And for you, the listener, we want to see what this high-level, kind of absurd scenario tells us about our own relationship with truth and language every single day.
It feels like a modern thought experiment.
It is. The analysis is really clear that the moment Hankman breaks his silence, even just to say, I am the truth, that claim is instantly invalidated, irreversibly. Yeah. And we're going to pick apart that failure.
Okay, let's unpack that. Because Hankman, before he goes silent, he says his claim to be the truth was only valid before he opened his mouth. That seems, incredibly restrictive. How can the simple act of speaking just invalidate a claim like that?
Well, it all hinges on what the sources are calling an irreversible split.
A split.
Yeah. The idea is that the philosophical claim he's making requires this absolute total identity. The person is the truth, no separation. But the second he speaks, a division appears. There's the content of what he says, and then there's the separate act of him saying it.
Okay, walk me through that separation, because, to most people, if I say I am hungry, the act of saying it is just part of the reality of being hungry.
Sure, but this is different because it's an absolute claim. Think of it like this. Hankman is a physical person. When he speaks, he's performing an action. The vibration of his vocal cords, the puff of air, the decision to communicate, that action is part of him.
Right. It's something he's doing.
But that action is not identical to the abstract concept of the truth.
Ah, okay. So Hankman, the person, is now made of different parts. There's the truth part, the content, but also the just speaking part, which is just an action.
Precisely. The act of speaking becomes this little piece of Hankman that exists outside the statement, I am the truth. So he can't be fully identical with the truth anymore. He's now got this other non-truth stuff mixed in, the messy, mechanical process of articulation.
That introduces difference where he needs absolute unity.
Yes. It's an incredibly high bar for identity. It's philosophical purity, but it comes at the cost of, well, all human communication.
And the analysis connects this to other paradoxes, right?
Yeah, it does, directly to things like the liar paradox. This statement is false. The statement refers to itself, and then it destroys itself. Hankman's statement does the same thing.
Can we make that a bit more relatable? Is there an everyday analogy for this?
Let's try patience. Imagine you claim, I am the embodiment of absolute perfect patience. But the moment you make that claim, you do it by, say, aggressively interrupting someone to shout it. The act of interruption, the aggressive delivery, it completely contradicts the content of patience. The way you delivered the message just ruined the message itself.
The medium obstructs the message.
Exactly. Language, just by its nature, creates distance. It has to be interpreted, it has context, it has a physical mechanism. All of which is separate from the pure idea.
So the unity is just shattered the second he speaks. And this is why, as the sources say, he mustn't say anything. Okay, so if speaking is doomed to fail, our philosophical fashion icon here needs a new plan. How does he do it?
He cheats brilliantly and hilariously. He retires his vocal cords and just uses the T-shirt.
He lets the T-shirt speak for him.
Yep.
So the shirt becomes this passive visual sign. That's a really interesting move, almost like a protest against how language even works.
And that's how the sources analyze it. He's sidestepping what they call the fallacy of linguistic self-reference.
Wait, what exactly is that fallacy? Is it just that the container ruins the contents?
In this context, basically, yes. It's when the speaker includes their own act of speaking, their own will, their own physical action inside the statement. By doing that, you bring in all these elements that contradict the pure assertion. With the T-shirt, Hankman takes his active, compromising self out of the loop.
So truth is no longer spoken, it's worn or shown. It's passive.
And that shift is huge. It pulls the whole conversation into a different philosophical world. The analysis even says it has an almost Zen Buddhist draw. Truth stops being this intellectual thing you argue about and just becomes pure existence.
That idea of pure passive presence seems to be the real key here. Just being.
It is. The sources use this wonderful German term for it, reins Dasein. The idea is that the highest form of truthfulness is silence, or this kind of passive presence, because it doesn't have the fragmentation that language forces on everything.
So you just become a thing in the world that is simply there, and that quiet, contradiction-free existence is the truth.
And that's the safest position he can take. As long as he stays quiet, the word on his chest is, uncontaminated by his own messy human will.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. Why would he break that? If silence is philosophically perfect, why give it up? The dialogue shows he actually starts looking for a compromise. He wants to talk again.
Well, that's the human element, fighting back against the philosophical purity, isn't it? We want to communicate. We want to assert ourselves, even when we know language has limits. So Hankman decides, okay, maybe the word truth, Wahrheit, is just too big. It's too complex. It demands too much. He needs a simpler word, something so minimal it won't trigger that collapse of identity.
And that brings us to the second T-shirt. He swaps Wahrheit for just 2 letters. Da.
Da. In English, here. And this is a really significant move. It's a shift toward radical simplification. By just asserting da, he's trying to claim simple existence, pure presence, without defining it, without judging it, without any of that complexity.
And Dak has a lot of philosophical weight, especially in the German tradition. It's not just like saying, I am standing in this spot.
Oh, not at all. This is where you have to get the context. When he wears da, he is invoking that idea of Reinsdasein, pure being there. And it echoes, crucially, Heidegger's concept of Dasein.
Which is not an easy concept.
No, it's often translated as conscious being or being there. For Heidegger, Dasein is the unique way humans exist by being aware of and questioning their own existence.
So he's gone from this massive cosmic claim, I am truth, to the simplest, most undeniable fact, I am present. Here.
Exactly. It's the ultimate minimalist position. He's trying to shrink the linguistic footprint of his identity down to almost nothing, hoping he can just assert existence itself.
There's a lot of humor in that, too. Bringing this high-stakes metaphysics down to a word that could be a buzzer sound.
The sources point that out. It's intentional. But the analysis is also very clear that even this attempt, this minimalist stance, is, and I love the German phrase, zum Scheitern verurteilt, it's doomed to fail.
Why? I mean, if all he's claiming is here, how can that fall apart?
Because the final linguistic trap is still there. Someone can ask a follow-up question. Someone can walk up to him and ask, who is here? And to answer, he has to make a statement again. He has to say, I am here. And in that moment, the split is back. The identity between the simple presence, da, and the complex person making the claim, I, is broken all over again.
So any attempt to embody pure truth, whether it's a huge concept or just a simple declaration of presence, it fails. Articulation itself creates the separation. It's a perfect closed dilemma.
It's a very tight philosophical argument, yeah. And what makes the source material so great is how loose and funny the whole exchange feels while making that point.
Which leads us to the irony of it all. The sources talk about a dopulate irony, a double irony. Should probably spend a minute on that because that's where the human element really comes through.
Right. So the first layer of irony is just the scale of it all. You have this massive, eternal, philosophical claim to be the truth. And the medium for it is a cheap printed T-shirt.
It's like writing the secret of the universe on a napkin. It just deflates the seriousness of it immediately.
It does. And the second layer of irony is Hank Corman himself. He knows philosophically that he can't speak. He knows it's impossible. And yet, what's the first thing he does? He starts trying to find a linguistic compromise. He's performing his own dilemma, which is just inherently funny.
That resilience, that need to communicate even when you know it's futile, that feels like the real takeaway here. The point isn't to solve the problem of truth. It's to perform the limits of language itself.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the analysis concludes that truth, if it even exists in this way, isn't something you can possess. It's not a noun you can own. They describe it more like an event, something that vanishes the second you try to pin it down with a label.
So what does all this mean for us, for you listening? Someone who is just swimming in a sea of digital hot takes and published opinions all day.
I think the main distillation is about a kind of linguistic humility. The text is a reminder that every time we speak, every tweet we send, every declaration we make, especially the ones that claim to be the final word or the absolute truth, they are, by their very nature, an admission that the speaker is not identical with that pure, absolute idea they're trying to represent.
Because the moment you put it into words, you're introducing your own context, your interpretation, and that distance between the pure idea and your act of saying it. You're just saying something about the truth, you're not being it.
It's a powerful challenge to how we consume information. It suggests, we should be really skeptical of anyone who equates their personal identity with a universal truth claim. They're confusing the passive t-shirt with the very complicated speaker underneath it.
Okay, so to recap the journey, we started with Hankman, forced into silence by this truth t-shirt paradox. Speaking shatters identity. He tried to simplify things with here or a nod to pure existence. But even that failed as soon as language was required again.
And we're left with this idea that the deepest truth might not be something you say or define. It's something that, as the sources put it, can only be lived or worn with, a full awareness of its limits.
This raises a really important question for you to think about. If language is always this barrier to absolute truth, what about the public claims you see every day? Which people or which movements are asserting a kind of total certainty and trying to embody that claim, silencing opposition in the process? And are we accepting those claims just because they refuse to acknowledge that gap between who they are and what they're saying?
Yeah, think about where people perform conviction as a shield against any kind of nuance. Try to observe the difference between what's being said and what is simply present in the world around you. That silence, it can be a philosophical necessity, or it can be a very powerful political tool.
That is a deep thought to leave us with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.